Hey, and welcome back. I'm Ben.
And this is Joe.
You're listening to the Shit Hit the Fan miniseries of the Actor podcast, in which we talk about digital safety and security with focus on activists.
This is a mini series of short 20-ish minute episodes of conversations between the two of us on various topics on activism in these chaotic times.
Following up with our last episode, Joe and I were going to talk about privacy tools, browsers, and the problem of search engines.
So, what would be the first steps for people or activists or whoever who wants to reclaim their digital privacy? What would be the first steps to look at when it comes to the software privacy?
So, I mentioned that other time already. Most important threat model, have your threat model figure out the importance of things, the priority of things. Then if you identify certain things being a huge problem for you because it can really concern you, that is definitely the thing to look at first. Right? That is usually not going to be divesting from Google. Just to bluntly say that. Once you have done all of these things, once you're like, okay, and we have our stuff on our own, we moved away from Google Docs and we moved to Nextcloud, for example. So the simplest and easiest thing you can do is look for providers of software that have a different ethos than the hardcore big tech capitalist mindset. Because there is this really bad saying that data is the new oil, which is not true. In terms of money, oil is still the new oil. But in terms of how do you make money as a big corporation, in particular, if what you offer otherwise is free, is through data. I collect data that I then somehow can convince someone else to buy off me, or in the term of Facebook, you don't even give access to that active data, but use it to do some targeting that then is something you can sell to others. And so if you don't want to be that kind of product, look for organizations that have a different business model. Most of the time that means paying for the service itself. That is by far the best thing you can do, because if you're the customer, the incentives of that organization are to serve you and not someone else. If you're not paying, you should always ask yourself, where does the money come from? If it's run by an NGO, then maybe that's fine. There's a lot of NGOs. Yeah. We ourselves with Actor use Actor is free. You can use it yourself for free because the running cost for us is pretty low. And we are an NGO that has grants that we can do that with. But also our business model in the mid to long term is to provide services that require more resources on a paid subscription model. Because that is who we want to serve. That is how we want this organization to align. This is how it's supposed to be paying its bills. So that is the broad stroke general thing you want to do, is you make sure that you're the one in control of the money flow. Then they're going to serve what you're doing in a purely economic model. Of course, you can also move to other organizations that have other economic models. But if the ethics and the morals are aligned with you, that's already a better choice.
Yeah.
So then it depends really on the particular flavor of thing you want. The thing you need to reckon with is that these organizations like Google Docs is, I think, a prime example. They have a lot of money, which means they get to pay a lot of really good developers. And I'm not just talking about having the best of the people, but also just having many of them to build products that are really good.
Yeah.
As a result, if you move away from that and you move to smaller organizations that are more independent, they have less money. They very often have to or do actively work on open source product, but their usability very often lags behind, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So it also depends on your use case. If for whatever reason, I don't know, being able to create share pics, you still use Canva, but everything else is on your own control. That's an okay choice to make. I am totally against people who are like, if it doesn't do 100% privacy, then it's pointless. You still need to get the job done that you need to do. We're all busy, so don't take too much of a compromise.
Yeah.
However, there's more and more things that are doing that a lot better, and there is a growing, especially with the boom of AI and AI being shoved into every project and every product, and customers really not understanding why. Like there doesn't seem to be a demand for any of the things. There's a growing wave of people and organizations who are like no, let's have a different model here. This doesn't work for us. And so asking me the question today comes with a happy and a sad eye. The happy eye is that we see a lot more projects that actually try to do that. Also with high quality UX now, it's really nice to see that happening. Really big projects, and that's the sad eye. Really big projects, however, are a problem. I mentioned Google Docs. Building a word processor with the complexity that these kind of things allow nowadays is a lot of work. And so there's very few that really can compete with Google Docs in terms of ease of usability and access for many people. Similarly, we have this problem of a browser.
Yeah.
I want to specifically go into browsers for you for a second, because these are the thing that you then use to connect the other thing that tracks you. So even if you use Nextcloud or whatever cloud provider, if you use Google Chrome, Google is spying on you. They're not even making, like, they're even pretending that they're not. Google, when it came around with Chrome, had some really good technical things, but its main thing today is market share. Google, Chrome, but also Safari and Microsoft's Edge all use the same engine underneath that is controlled by Google. That means that Google has a lot of sway right now in what becomes the next generation of the web for quite a while now, and what gets developed and what is in there. When I say engine, it's really just the core part that makes the website render. So whether they are tracking or not, Google Chrome does. Google Chrome is very blatant about tracking. There's a lot of features and privacy things you can disable, but it essentially will send everything you type into the search bar to the Google service all the time, whether you want to or not. If you care about your own privacy, you do not want to use Google Chrome.
Right.
You could use Safari or Microsoft Edge. However, both of these, well, Safari more than Microsoft, have not shown a big history of being super privacy observing themselves. I'm not sure if Microsoft Edge does some of the things. I only know that Google Chrome in particular is very upfront and very stringent on doing these kind of things.
Right.
The recommendation for a very long time has been use Mozilla Firefox. And standing here today, I would still make that claim. However, so the market share is like 80% or more is Google and Google Chrome-like browsers, which means that certain websites do not simply work with other browsers anymore, which is yay. That's exactly how we thought the web would work.
Yeah.
But also, Mozilla makes his money through Google.
Okay.
They have a deal with Google. Google pays them millions of dollars a year to be the default search engine in Firefox.
Okay.
Just blatantly a big check. I think it's 200 million or something more once a year. And then on top of that, if you then say, okay, you use Google from Firefox, Firefox also gets minimal contribution fees from Google on top of that. So they have a very strong alignment, unfortunately, with Google as well. And moreover, like, I think, I'm not exactly sure, but it's the majority of the money that comes in for Mozilla is on that. And the Mozilla Foundation, which is the foundation arm, isn't actually the one developing Firefox. It's the Mozilla Corporation, which is sort of independent of that, and that has this Google deal. And Google could at any point pull this plug and say, we're not paying for that anymore. You're not even big enough as a market share for us to care. Therefore, we're going to pull that out. And at that point, that browser is probably not going to sustain. That has been a long-standing issue in that field, and Mozilla Corporation has tried to find other avenues of making money, like offering VPN services, and now they are venturing into the field of AI as well, which is questionable. So
Right.
as it stands, Firefox is still better. There's a few that focus directly on privacy itself. You might have heard about Brave, the Brave browser. But
Yes,
almost
I
all of
heard.
them use the same Google engine, which means that at the end of the day, they're very, like, even though you can plug around a lot of things, if it's about removing the power from Google in this case, you won't. Moreover, many of these projects, we already talked about that last time a little bit, are run by people you might not want to actually share a beer with.
Mm.
Brave in particular has run by a person that isn't really clear about their interest, and Brave as well as Opera have like high stakes set up to do crypto and other things, which you might not also feel like is the community you want to be involved with. So
Right.
unfortunately, that's a sad eye on the browser front. We're not standing very well, and that is due to
Yeah.
the fact that like these really big, really hard software projects are really hard to build up, maintain, and continue to work on. That is simply something where we don't have good progress to report. We have Nextcloud, we have a lot of other things that are smaller companies that work well as running from server companies with I think Nextcloud maybe has 80 people now or something like that. So you can do that and you can build something that's useful, but you cannot build a browser with 80 people. It's just a really complex machine.
So you say that Mozilla Firefox is still better than Google Chrome. So
Absolutely.
but
At this
right.
point, for sure. And I'm curious to see. Like this year is going to be tough, I think, for Mozilla because it's losing market share every year, which means that its position to discuss with Google is also becoming weaker every time. And I think the current head is supposed to make it profitable somehow or make money somehow this year. So we'll see if that happens because Mozilla also fired a bunch of people last year, twice, I think.
Right.
It's questionable whether we can do that.
Yeah. So how I understood it summarized is like even these browsers that could be considered more privacy focused or ethical, they have still, all of them have Google engine effects on things. So there is not like at the moment, there is not available any like decent browser that doesn't have Google engine or doesn't somehow relate to Google.
Never say never. There's a few other projects. I'm talking about from the perspective of I could use that on a daily basis as a regular person.
Right.
Probably not. No. Like Microsoft's Edge, Safari, and Chrome, which together are probably 80% market share, are all the same Google engine. Then you have Firefox, and then you have minor others, right? Like Opera I mentioned before, or Brave as alternative browsers. But effectively, that's it. Hi, Ben here, the producer. Just a quick interjection. I forgot to mention one upcoming Firefox fork that is gaining some traction, which is called LibreWolf. So Libre as in free and wolf as the animal. It's an interesting project as they just fork Firefox and then adapt it to be more privacy focused. So disable everything that could compromise your privacy. I recommend trying it for the simple fact that you will notice how many things exist in a modern browser that, if not disabled, could lead to privacy leakage, and how limited the browser then becomes very quickly. That said, it's only a fork of Firefox, so they take over the latest version of Firefox and then adapt it to have basically privacy first settings, which means that the baseline product itself, Firefox, is still under Mozilla, and the project cannot sustain without Mozilla still funding the core of the development. So it's probably not going to be a sustainable project outside of Firefox or superseding Firefox, but definitely an interesting project to mention, and if you're curious about this kind of stuff, to look at as well. And therefore, like, your choices right now, Firefox is still definitely the better choice if you care about privacy. They do a lot more. They also allow you to, minor tidbit. So ad blockers. That's the other thing on browsers. Install an ad blocker. Ad blockers are a great way to prevent privacy leaks, because that is exactly what they intend to do. Ads try to figure out who you are and then show you stuff you don't want. And so ad blockers are definitely something you want. There was a fight recently. Most of them are extensions that you install afterwards into the browser that come from a public marketplace where people can deploy these kind of things. And Google Chrome had an ad blocker called uBlock Origin, which they blocked the developer access to. So they tried to actively make people not install this extension anymore.
Right.
By all means, Google and the way that they execute their power in that sphere has been nothing but evil. It is pretty clear that anything that even could even look at concerning the bottom line, they will do, and their bottom line is advertisement. Something to always remember: Google's business model is advertisement. Advertisement you can do because you get a lot of data from the users. So therefore, everything that potentially cuts down on the data that we can collect against that user is in our best interest. And they are fighting that. They're fighting that with a lot of money. So Firefox still allows you to install Ghostery or uBlock Origin, which is definitely something I recommend. Use Firefox and use uBlock Origin. We might have to revisit that a year from now, but
what was it called? uBlocker or any other ad blockers?
There's a uBlock, and there's two versions of that, unfortunately, because of distress in the developers' sphere. But there's uBlock Origin, meaning the original uBlock. That is the extension you want to install. I'm not exactly sure what the current status with. There was a big backlash when Google did that, and they rolled back some of the stuff or like something like. But in general, Firefox, uBlock Origin. Also, you will notice that the web is a lot calmer when it doesn't have screaming advertisements all the time.
Yeah.
Whenever I see jump over and see my partner or someone else surfing the web, I'm like, how can you? How does that work?
How can you? Okay, so why you
uBlock space Origin ORIGIN.
Yeah. Okay. So cool. You could use Mozilla Firefox, download ad blocker. Then you mentioned briefly something about search engines and Google engine attached to that. And this is also something that I've been wondering because I try to use something called DuckDuckGo, but the search results are not obviously as good as Google search results. So I'm curious, like how any search engines you would recommend or that is existing, and how does that tie also to the same discussion about kind of Google dictating almost everything in the end?
I am using DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is my default one, and one of the things they do is they do not track your stuff. There is others in the activism spheres. Ecosia is another one that is very often claimed, in particular because they claim to use that money to plant trees, but you don't pay them. So I'm not exactly sure how it's supposed to work, but like from my perspective, the only way that you make money with a search engine is through ads, and therefore they do use the same business model. But from a privacy perspective, it's not that great. DuckDuckGo had a long-standing stance on privacy, that they're not tracking you. Google definitely is tracking you. There's no question here. The same is true for the other ones, Bing and Yandex. So that's the thing to mention. Tech is always about compromise, in that sense that whatever you choose, like the same for if you don't do Google Docs because of privacy concerns, totally valid reason, you're probably having a worse UX with whatever tool you use.
Right. Yeah.
And that's like always balances to strike. So the big problem with DuckDuckGo is that it uses the Yandex index, which is a Russian search engine.
Right.
And that has obvious problems. Aside from the fact that search results in some languages simply aren't as good. I mostly search stuff in English, and it's fairly good. Very often I find it better on DuckDuckGo than on Google when I then cross-reference with something in Google. Of course, what you can do is use Firefox in privacy mode, right? You can Control or Shift Command P, and it will open a window where everything that is happening tracking-wise will be removed as soon as you close that window. And you can do that, for example, to search on Google and stuff. And it will also not be like having your account. However, Google will see your IP and still knows that it's you. Like it's not giving you super privacy, right? It's just a minor way to piss them off a little bit. If either you're willing to accept that you then use the Yandex index, or I think Ecosia uses the Bing index, which is the one from Microsoft. So there's just a handful of indices that search engines can use, and then you have a few different front ends built on top of that. So same story here. If you're saying like, oh, I don't have much of a problem with it being tracked, it just should go to like planting trees, Ecosia is fine. I think that uses the Bing engine. If you don't care, Yahoo uses the Bing engine now, I think. Google, not for us in Europe, but in the US has been rolling out a lot of AI features, which have questionable properties. Among other things, the quality isn't that great. Very famously last year, it recommended you to eat stones on your pizza as a great topping. Yeah. It's your favorite Ben again. I have to interject here because I conflated two independent AI recommendations here into one, and I want to set the record straight. Google recommended to put glue on pizza, and non-toxic glue in particular if you want to taste better, which comes from a famous Reddit post in the past, as well as eat 1 stone a day for your health. These were separate recommendations by the Google search engine. This was not put stones in pizza, although arguably if you asked for both, you probably get it to tell you both. Odd stuff comes out of AIs. But the other thing is also that by trying to give you AI responses and then a lot of advertisement, there's a big criticism that you don't actually find anymore the stuff that you're looking for on Google, which I think in the US is actually true. For us in Europe, it's still a little better. But that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, my phone keeps giving me this, try Gemini, the AI, whatever assistant. I was like, I don't want it. Stop like pushing it to me. I don't want this.
That is what I meant earlier with like the ethics of the organization that does business with you in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Their goal is not your satisfaction.
Yeah.
It simply is not.
Yeah.
And that non-alignment is what you feel being annoying. Because if it was aligned, they wouldn't have to bother you about it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
And that was it for today.
Short and sweet as usual. Don't miss our other episodes of this mini-series.
Subscribe to Digital Activism wherever you get your podcasts from.
By the way, we are thinking about changing the name of the podcast, so if you have any ideas or suggestions or any other comments, let us know, either by the Actor app or email us at podcast@actor.global.